Hey man, thanks for the click. This video is going to cover my quick grabs, all the little things that I carry with me in my backpack and that everybody kind of has in there, but they don't often get covered in the what's in my bag type videos because it's a lot of fiddly stuff and no one has the attention span for that. I have a series of videos that I'm going to go into what I carry in my pack in different situations, and this is a little kit that's going to be common to all of them. Now, I'd really say that this is the most essential kit. My poop kit, my first aid kit, I'm okay leaving those at home as long as I have what's in this kit. So we'll go through those other kits another time. Let's go through this one now and talk about each item and why I bring it. One quick note before we get started. For the purpose of this video, I'm showing you everything in a plastic bag, but I don't always carry it that way. Sometimes I'll carry things in a fanny pack like this because I'm planning to be away from my pack for large portions of the day. Let's say it's a fishing trip or something like that. So if I'm not gonna have my pack all the time, I'm gonna carry something like this that I will have with me. So this is my quick grabs kit, an assortment of items that I use on an almost daily basis that are small and fiddly and would get easily lost in my pack or my pockets if I didn't have one place where they all go. I like to keep them in a quart-sized freezer bag. Since there are a lot of small fiddly things, it's a lot easier to see what you're grabbing if you can see what you're grabbing. I find that if you've got these things in a little stuff sack, digging around in there, it can be hard to find the exact thing that you want, especially if you've got things appropriately repackaged into smaller containers, because many smaller containers have similar diameters and things like that. So when you're grabbing around, you might think you're grabbing the bottom of one thing when you're grabbing the top of the other. So clear bag can be really helpful. I find that these things hold up fairly well. One place where they can tend to break down is at the zipper because you're getting into this thing all the time. I've run a strip of clear packing tape around the top. This helps reinforce the tabs and these edges. And these tabs will sometimes rip off and then you have to get your fingernail in there and it takes a lot longer to get in and out of the bag that way. Sometimes you'll rip out the edge here. That can rip the whole thing down the side and be a problem that way, or just make it difficult to close because it will no longer be properly aligned on that side. So running a bit of packing tape around the top is a good idea, not only on this bag, any sort of zip type bag that you have, including the scent-proof bags. These things are especially prone to ripping at the top and it's pretty difficult to deal with. Since that's where you keep your food, it can be really annoying. Anytime you're using a zip top bag, I suggest that you run a strip of tape around the top. What I have in here is sort of representative. I'm going to show you what I have in here, also talk about some alternative scenarios and other things that I might bring or might not bring, just depending on what I'm doing on that particular trip. First thing I'll say off the bat, if you're going to the Sierra, and really if you're going most places, it's not a bad idea to have a mosquito head net. When bugs are bad, just being able to keep them away from your face is a tremendous comfort. And if you've got something like this, as well as a wind shirt and some pants or some other tight woven clothing that will keep the bugs from being able to land on your skin, and you treat those clothing with permethrin, you can end up not using very much bug stuff at all. So I'll start with a bug head net. This is just a permethrin treated head net. I like the Sea to Summit ones. They have a softer mesh material than I've seen with some other companies. And they're not the only one that uses that material. When I was looking at them, I like the feel of their material the best. This thing's going to be around your neck and on your face and things like that. So if it's really abrasive or uncomfortable, you're going to notice pretty quickly. I think that a permethrin treatment is a nice to have, but it's easy to do at home as well. So don't fret if the one that you have access to doesn't have a permethrin treatment. If you don't know what that is, it's just adding an insecticide that has some permanence onto the material. I think it lasts for like 6 washings or something like that. It's the same as the ex officio bugs away. They're just using a permethrin treatment. They're all basically permethrin. I find that one treatment will last me a season. Next, we can talk about lip balm. Big thing with this stuff is you want to have something with an SPF value in it. That's because most of the time when you get chapped lips, it's because your lips are burned. So if you're using a chapstick that doesn't have an SPF rating, then you can still get chapped lips even though you're using your chapstick on a regular basis. So make sure that the chapstick that you use has an SPF rating. The best approach is to usually avoid sun exposure to begin with. So the first line of defense is always a long sleeve shirt, preferably with a hood, or have a large hat that'll cover most of your head and neck. When that's not an option, or if it's not going to be comfortable, then you still need to have a good amount of sunscreen. This is a 2-ounce bottle. I wouldn't carry more than this. Carry it in a bottle that you refill yourself so that you know the amount that you have and you know how long it will last you. If you are continually using tubes, then you could probably estimate how much you're using, but it's much better to get something like this is where you are very familiar with that bottle and that shape, and you know how long it's going to take you to use up the amount of sunscreen that you have available. That way you don't take more than you need. That's an important part of being ultralight or whatever, is to make sure you're not carrying anything that you don't need. Since I usually go on weekend trips, I can actually get away with a much smaller amount. This 2-ounce bottle is typically good for 3 to 5 days if I'm wearing shorts. If I'm wearing pants, then I can usually get away with 1 ounce or even a ½ ounce because I'm just hitting my face and my hands. So I don't have as much skin to cover and I don't need as much sunscreen. For a fire source, I carry 2 things. I carry a lighter and matches. They both have different strengths and weaknesses. This butane lighter is great and convenient. It lights easily, but the butane in it can have problems vaporizing when you get below freezing. I have matches. I only keep them in this plastic bag inside of the other plastic bag, so they're always nice and dry. They're more convenient for starting an alcohol stove. If you've got an alcohol stove like this and you're lighting it with a lighter, you really need to get your finger in there if it's cold. The alcohol vapor doesn't rise that much above the surface when it's really cold, so you have to get your finger in there, and then sometimes it's not the most ideal thing to have your finger that close to alcohol. You can kind of get around that by dribbling a little bit of alcohol on the edge of the stove. I still prefer to use a match when it's an option. You can light the match and then just reach down to the surface of the alcohol wherever it might be. I use wooden matches rather than paper matches. When you've got a string of humid weather for several days, paper matches can absorb all that moisture, even if you're not getting them wet, just from the humidity in the air, and then become less effective. Wooden matches don't do that, and that's why I carry them. I carry bug repellent in a tiny bottle like this. This is, I think, a 5 ml dropper bottle. I find that this is enough if I've got my clothing treated with permethrin, which I strongly suggest. It makes a big difference in terms of the bugs that get on you. Some people shy away from chemicals generally. When you have bugs on you, you tend not to mind so much about whether something's organic. Permethrin has been used on clothes for years. It's, if you get ex officio or any sort of bug repellent clothing or something like that, the chemical on it is permethrin. You can look up how to do a permethrin treatment, or maybe I'll do a video on it sometime, but I suggest that permethrin treated clothing be the first line of defense. And then if you just have this, you can put a couple drops in your hand and rub it around, put some on your hand and rub it on the back of your neck or your face. That'll be enough to keep the bugs off of you. The best insect repellent that I've used so far in terms of overall experience is the picaridin based. It doesn't have the oily grossness of DEET. I will still bring a small dropper of 100% DEET when I'm on a backpacking trip and I know there's a lot of bugs. I don't like to do it if DEET gets onto your air vault or anything else that's made out of a clear plastic. It can kind of craze that plastic or put little cracks in it. Once that happens, the bear can's trashed. If you do carry DEET, carry it inside a separate plastic bag just to help protect your bear can. As you can see, I also keep DEET in a small dropper bottle. I don't find that I use more than this, even on a longer trip like on the John Muir Trail. I just had one of these things that I used. Next thing that we'll talk about is soap. Soap is good. I actually carry 2 small bottles of soap like this in my pack, one in my poop kit and one in my quick grabs, because you can use it for a lot of things, comfort and safety, just kind of cleaning up. If you've ever done a backcountry bidet, it can really sort of freshen up your trip a bit. Just being able to wash your face and your hands on a somewhat regular basis and get the crud out from around your fingernails can do a lot in terms of making sure you don't have any gastrointestinal issues. Oftentimes when people end up getting a bug or they think that they get Giardia or something like that, it's really that they ate their own poop. Soap is a good thing. Make sure that you've got at least a little bit with you and use it regularly. If you are using soap, make sure you use it following the Leave No Trace guidelines. Dig a hole, you wash your hands into the hole, and you make sure that hole is at least 100 yards away from water. So I do carry a knife. Some people aren't as into it. I still find that it's very convenient. While I could have a custom solution that's lighter, I find that a little Swiss Army knife is great. I do like to use a Swiss Army knife that has a light in it as well as a little pen. I find that those are items that I don't use enough to have a dedicated thing, but a little hand light that is convenient and I can keep in my pocket, as well as a little pen if I need to write a note or something like that, can really be convenient. When you're using this, you're probably going to use the scissors for things like trimming nails or cutting tags off of blisters and things like that. That's probably the most useful. I will say that the best thing for popping blisters is a pair of scissors, because you can open up that hole to make sure it doesn't seal up again. This is what I usually keep, and I find it to be a very effective tool. As far as water purification goes, I carry Aquamira, but I carry it as a backup. This approach is similar to what you see in the Ultralight backpacking book and things like that. I use 2 small bottles that I have repackaged Aquamira. If you haven't seen it before, it comes in a container like this with a couple larger dropper bottles and a mixer cup in it. Usually you'd mix the Aquamira from the 2 little bottles into the mixing cup and then let it sit. But the approach that is suggested as an option, albeit an off-label option in the Ultralight backpacking book, is to mix it it into a small opaque bottle. Just use that over the course of the day, and as long as it comes out like electric bright yellow, you know it's still usable. Generally, you don't want to use one batch for more than a day though. This is what I'll use, but I end up using this as a backup. I used to use it as primary. Water filters have gotten so incredibly light and easy to use. I tend to use this Katahdin Bee Free these days. If you're not familiar with this, it has a big opening. It tends to be easy to get this filled. These filters last, in my experience, about a season. You do want to make sure that you're using as clear of water as possible. If you're using murky or tea colored water in this, your filter is not going to last very long. And generally you should avoid that water. It can be not so good for your kidneys. This thing only weighs a couple ounces, so usually I just use water out of this. It's convenient to be able to drink the water right away. Another important thing that I carry is a little bit of like an athletic lube for your feet or for chafing and things like that. It's basically just Vaseline with another component called simethicone in it. As far as I can tell, the simethicone is kind of optional. If all you've got convenient is Vaseline, then that's not a problem. This stuff is called Trail Toes. I find it works great. It can make your feet very water resistant if you're having to spend a lot of time walking through water because it's early season. Perhaps it's a hot day, so your feet are getting very macerated. Basically, if the skin on your feet becomes sort of pale and pasty, you should use a bunch of this if you can and just slather it on and let it soak in, and it'll help keep that from happening. As far as toothpaste goes, I carry two different options, usually not at the same time, but I'll carry either toothpaste dots, which are little blobs of toothpaste that you put on a plate or something and let it dry out, and then you peel them up and throw them into some cornstarch or some baking soda just to let them stay separate because they can have kind of a gooey surface. If you need to brush your teeth, you just get one of these, you pop it in your mouth, you chew it a little bit, and then you brush your teeth, and it works great. It's just like having toothpaste at home. If I'm really going light, I like to carry baking soda with me. It's not going to freshen your mouth as much, but it will remove gunk off of your teeth, and baking soda has some additional benefit. Because it's very basic, there is some sort of tenuous evidence that it can help neutralize lactic acid. What I find is most important about it is that having some baking soda on hand gives you a way to deal with the almost inevitable heartburn that you get from eating super greasy food when you're on trail. And if you're not eating greasy food, you should probably try it. Greasy food is how you get the highest calories per ounce, and if you're trying to be ultralight, you want to have high calories per ounce. You want greasy food, but you also want a way to deal with the heartburn that can come with it. As far as toothbrush goes, just a chopped off toothbrush. I like to have a couple flossers on hand. It allows me to keep my hands out of my mouth. Sometimes my hands can be kind of grody on the trail, and I find that I'll floss more if I have some flosses on hand. These aren't super environmentally friendly because birds will eat them sometimes and then they'll die because this will poke out of them, so I'm actually not a fan of them in general. On the trail, I will have a couple on hand just so I can clean out my teeth. Now I'd like to talk through some optional things that I sometimes will carry with me. One of them is a little mini thing of deodorant. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it can go a long way to making you more comfortable on trail. If you are going to use something like this, I would suggest you look for something that's white and pasty because those tend to last longer. These are also aluminum based, so some people have concerns around that. I don't know what the effects of aluminum in deodorant are. Science tells me that it isn't a problem. The aluminum based white pasty ones are far more effective on trail. As far as lights that I carry with me, oftentimes my kit will include something small like this. This is a Petzl E-Light. It's a very small and not very bright headlamp. If you're just going to do stuff in camp, it's all you need. You don't need anything super bright. You just need something to produce a little bit of light so you can see what you're doing. If you're going to do any night hiking, I would suggest you use something a little bit more powerful. This is, however, a very light and convenient option. I don't know if they still provide it with this little zip line thing, but it helps keep things from getting tangled in your bag. So I do like that a lot. The next step up is this little flashlight, which I will use. This is a single AAA battery flashlight that will give me about an hour or hour and a half of good light out of it. It'll put out around 100 lumens, and in that respect, it's bright enough to get by with. For less than an ounce overall, it's hard to beat. My next step up, and what I usually will bring, is this. This is an Ultra Aspire clip-on light. It's designed to be put on the waistband of your shorts when you're running to give you that low angle light without having to carry it in your hand. However, if you're a little creative, you can put it on the waist belt of your pack, you can put it on the sternum strap of your pack, or you can just flip it upside down and put it onto a beanie. In general, I find that this is a very useful light. It works well for me, and it runs on one AAA, gives me about 3 hours of really good light out of a AAA. Then the big guns in terms of a headlamp is this. This is a black diamond icon, and this guy will brighten up the night no matter how dark it is. It's meant for caving, it produces a tremendous amount of light, and it has like 70 hours of battery life. So this is the big gun, and if I know I'm going to do a lot of night hiking or I'm planning to do like a 24-hour race or something like that, this is what I'll typically take with me. One thing that I'll sometimes take with me just for fun is this. This is a little fishing kit. It's out of a survival kit, and as long as you've got a fishing license, in many cases the fish in the Sierra aren't that hard to catch. Some of the hooks in here are a little bit large, so I might actually substitute some of these lures. Something like this can actually be very effective at catching fish in the Sierra because you're sight fishing. The water is very clear and the fish are very hungry. If you have a fishing license, it's not bad to carry something like this. One quick tip about carrying batteries, which if you're carrying a light you would need to have in your kit, is that it can be nice to carry them in a little plastic bag like this, where the batteries aren't going to tend to flip around on their own, and you've marked a plus and a minus on there. If the positive side is on this end, it's charged, then all you have to do is flip around any batteries that aren't charged, and you will always know which batteries are good and which batteries are not. A backup water source that I will talk about here, but I do not use typically, are these. These are tablets. Tablets are nice because it's a pre-dose of same sort of stuff that you have in the Aquamira. It's chlorine dioxide, just in a tablet form. Very effective, it's easy to carry, but you're limited in terms of the dosage that you can add. One tablet is a quart. I tend to carry 23-ounce bottles. Something like this would always be over-chlorinating the water. It'll just make it taste nasty. I don't usually use these. If I'm trying to go very, very light, sometimes I'll use these as a backup water source with just 6 or 8 of them. If I have an issue, I can get to the next trailhead or somewhere else where I can buy a new filter or buy some Aquamira. And the last thing that I'll carry in there, just as an emergency solution, if I know I'm going into wet weather or I know that I'm going to be hiking a long distance by myself or something like that, is this. This is an emergency fire and signal kit. All I have in here are some tinder tabs. You want to have a bunch of them because it's hard to start a fire when things are wet. A couple trick candles, which are sort of optional, but they help to relight a fire if the wind blows it out really quickly, if you just set these tinder tabs up and they're immediately blown out. Then a fire steel, because that will start a fire even when things are wet. I will say that you might as well just bring some matches or another lighter if you don't know how to use one of these things, because an emergency is not the time to learn. And the last thing that I carry in here is a little signaling mirror. It's hard to really signal without a signaling mirror. It can make a big difference. You can see these things from a very long distance away. I've seen bad situations where someone had to hit the button on their satellite messenger. The helicopter just circled and circled because they could not see the person, and it took quite some time for them to actually get the attention of the helicopter pilot. If you've got a little mirror like this, it's easy as pie. They know to look for it, and it's very easy for them to see as long as you're signaling correctly. And that's all I have for the Quick Grabs kit. I'll talk about my first aid kit in another video, and I'll go into detail with the poop kit as well at some point, but I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to talk about this because I could get by without a poop kit and without a first aid kit as long as I've got my Quick Grabs. So those are the essentials. Hopefully seeing what I have in my Quick Grab kit will help you get on trail and be confident that you have what you need in order to get through your hike. If you feel like you got something out of this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. Feel free to comment if you have any questions or if you have any ideas, things that you'd like me to go through. I have a wealth of experience with this and I'm happy to share. Later.